Hello, everyone. The session is about to start. Just a friendly reminder to silence your phones and please be respectful of our speakers. Nearest restrooms are out of the doors and to your left, as well as the exits. I would also like to welcome to the stage AWS's Cody Allen, who is a Senior Specialist Solutions Architect, to introduce our next speaker.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming today. Welcome to AWS Summit. This morning, we're going to talk with eHealth so they can talk to us about their migration journey to AWS. Now, their mission is to connect U.S. individuals and families with quality, affordable health insurance and Medicaid plans by partnering with over 180 top healthcare partners. Joining us, Sundar Shankar. He is the SRE, Director of Cloud Operations for eHealth, and he's going to walk us through their migration to AWS. Hand it over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cody. Thank you, Cody. So how are you, everybody? Good morning. So how many of you are really thinking to migrate to cloud or migrating to a DocumentDB or other databases? Wow, there's quite a few folks here already working on it. That's good. I hope that this session will be much more useful for you guys. And let's see. I'm going to be covering like very high level. I'm not going too technical on some of the stuff. I just want to give you what we learned, how this can benefit you and your organization going forward, right? So let's get into the agenda. So we'll be covering about our whole journey and what lessons we learned and what some of the key successes that we identified as part of this journey. So maybe a small intro about the company, right? As Cody also introduced us a little bit. So we are one of the largest e-health provider in the US and 20 years of experience. And our mission is to connect everybody, right? Everybody with a quality and affordable health insurance plan. We enable our customers to do our research online, able to buy affordable plan, right? On the range within that marketplace. So okay, I want to go back. We as a company also have 5 million plus customers, right? And we also been like growing steadily, and we make about $500,000 in 2019, and then we have been growing in double-digit number year over year, and we have been seeing like a tremendous growth that the business is going through, and that's also one of the challenges that we are facing as a company. And this is our IT landscape right before our migration journey. And you can see that we are doing end-to-end, right? We pretty much like we are starting from infrastructure, we are managing compute, we are managing storage, we are doing database, we are doing pretty much everything end-to-end. And this makes perfect sense, right, when you're in 2010, right? In 2021, it doesn't make sense. As a company, we want to focus purely on our core business, what we can add to our customers. So we had some challenges along the way since we are managing our own data centers. So we had to go through these pain points every year when we are getting closer to our annual enrollment cycle. This enrollment and peak season starts like October and ends in Jan. And every year we had to go through like, oh, how many hardwares are going out of date, and we had to find a new support partners or upgrade our hardware for capacity need and look at like our operational overhead in terms of managing, right, to make it more efficient. And this also like a lot of expense we had to do for managing our data center in terms of circuit costs, and doing all of this stuff to keep the data center more healthy and secure for our customers. So there's a lot of tech debt that we have to take care of data center, right? And this also slowed us tremendously in terms of our cloud innovation is not there, and we are slow in technology adoption, and we are not able to leverage any of the modern cloud native solutions, which kind of slowed us down tremendously in the last few years. So we were looking at like, what can we do? How can we improve this? Like our journey is, overall our project is to make sure that we deliver the business, key business drivers and goals for the company, and we identified these top 5. So basically our goal is to reduce our costs and eliminate data center waste, right? And our immediate goal is to at least reduce 15%, and then over the next few years we want to get it to a 30 and 40%. And right now we are spending like a lot of money. We know we can make it happen with this journey. And then obviously we want to increase our business agility, like in terms of like taking super fast, right? Able to enable our developers to be more productive. And we want to modernize our infrastructure and application development cycle so that we can innovate fast and get the features that our customers are looking for more faster. And obviously, right, we want to obviously improve our operation efficiency. One of the problems we have as a company, like we have data center, we have to manage that, and we are aging hardware, and that puts a lot of problem and strain in our teams, because you're going to hire and you're going to retain, right? Finding the talent is also hard to manage those type of infrastructure. So we want to improve the operational efficiency. And also we want to tie all of this to our major company goals, transforming the totally in a digital transformation. So the solution is super clear. After we know what we want to do, what's our goal, we want to be in AWS, and we want to hand off most of this stuff to AWS so that they can take care of from bottom to all the way to the top, right? You can see from the layers that we already handed off to AWS. Like AWS can now manage all the availability zones and all the infrastructure for us, and they're managing compute, they're managing storage, they're managing database, they're managing entire network for us. And now we need to just focus on the top 2 layers, our entire e-commerce stack, and also our back office application. And we also need to take care of like some of the network ingress and ingress traffic controllers. Other than that, we can give off everything to AWS. So how do we do this, right? That's a big question, and we know where we want to go, but how do we take the journey? And that requires like planning, right? There's a code like prepare. You have to prepare. You don't want to be failure, right? You have to prepare everything up front so that you can be successful at the end. So we have to do a lot more preparation before we can go there. So we started looking at like some of these pillars immediately, like looking and understanding whether we were able to do ourselves or we can go with AWS partners to deliver this. So we looked at our talent in-house, and we were able to analyze what we are, what's our strength, and we were able to hire some more talents to support this journey. So we hired, and then we ended up doing some migration assessment programs to understand what we use, what we consume, what we really need going to a cloud. And we are able to build some basic foundation that are necessary for us to be successful in the long run. So we also reached out to our other organization to make it much more aligned in terms of the company priorities and the business driver that I was talking about. And we ought to pick a right strategy. And this is a big topic, right? When somebody says we are migrating, there are different strategies that you can pick as a company. And we had the same challenge too. So we had to go through, we had to pick a right strategy. So we had to go much more deeper to understand what is ideal strategy. So we picked a hybrid strategy. I'll be explaining that a little bit in my following slides. And then we took our plan to our executives for an approval with our finance and all that identified what might be the plan and what might cost us going into this journey. And we got all the approvals in place before we can even go there. So it took like we initially planning like it might take like 9 months or so. We were super aggressive from the day one. We know this journey is going to transform the company and how we are modernizing the infrastructure and so forth. So we planned for 9 months, but we landed in 11 months. So that's still a good deal. How did we do that? Like, how did we do that? Like we kind of bucketed this into 3 basic stages. So the stage 1 we call like a phase 1. Phase 2 is like real migration. The phase 3 is more of an optimization. The phase 1, we want to test our waters, right? Basically, we want to make sure that we have what we need to be successful. So what we did is like we don't want to touch any existing production. So we built a DR site, basically disaster recovery site with AWS, and deploying every application that we have in that DR site, even though we had a DR site. So we want to test our expertise, because the way we did it, like we went to every single stage, like discovery, assessment, establish a new connectivity with a direct connect. We ended up building the foundational services that are necessary for us to be there. And we had to pick, for this DR strategy, we had to do an entire lift and shift. And we ended up like setting up a data replication. And then we started doing a DR test. And that kind of helped us assess where we are as a company and what type of skills we have and where we have gaps in terms of technology adoption and so forth. So that helped us to move to the phase 2. The phase 2 was much more planned out for going much more deeper in terms of tech stack. So we ended up like looking at every single application that is running in our data center. We were able to put that back in our big Excel sheet. We didn't have any tools. We used a big sheet. We looked at every server. We identified and we found a owner, and then we looked at what applications they're running, and we were able to map that out and look at like stateless session full, right? Basically, we identified like all the stateless application we should be able to migrate easily into a container. So we containerized about like 70–80% of the use case. The rest of the use case, like we were able to keep that as it is, and migrated all our database into most of the database into RDS, and we are also transforming some of the database to our document DB, and that's a big project by itself. So we had a parallel track going there so that we can take that all our database from our traditional database to more cloud native solution. In parallel, we are also looking like how we can build the muscles, right, before we can really support this production. So how do we build the muscle? So we have to get our teams trained. So we started working with AWS partners to build those training sessions, and we were able to onboard our marketplace vendors to get all of my teams are trained, right, in terms of like going back and certification, getting more training on this. Now we are also opening up for the larger company so that they can go back and enroll on this training program, so that before we go there are some teams that are already prepared for this to handle in production. So that's phase 2. This is the major time we spent on this entire migration. And then phase 3 is right now we are currently in. Basically, this objective of this stage is to focus on maturing your architecture, migrating all the database into RDS, which we were like partially lifting and migrating there. And we need to review our entire architecture using best practices, using a well-architectured framework. And obviously, we want to eliminate most of the waste. When you're doing a lift and shift or maybe a re-platforming, right? Obviously, you'll be spending a lot more than what you initially thought. So we were looking at like saying, oh, how can we eliminate waste? So we are looking at like see how we can sign a saving plan, how we can sign EDP, and all those things. So we already signed EDP. I'll be covering that in the next slide. What did I do? Okay. So this is the if you the previous slide I was showing you 3 stages. In this stage, like we kind of pushed that in a 4 quarter by quarter what deliverable we were doing as part of the journey. We started this journey like last year, like you can see here, July 2020, right? We started with our migration assessment. We started looking at our executive review, and we had our finance and executive team approve on all those plans. And we started our phase 1. That was like in my previous slide, I was talking about the DR, right? Basically building a parallel track without touching our existing business. And we were able to deliver that within a 1 quarter by Q4, end of Q4. We were able to test, and we had a clarity on like what we need to do. And we started redeveloping our the phase 2 plan, like focusing on defining clear strategy, right? For the okay. Like here, like defining a strategy, what type of strategy we need, like basically, and started focusing on like what type of approvals again you need to go through if there are any changes in the plan in terms of the real migration. And then we started building the other foundational tools, and we got some new tools as part of this migration. And then we also like prepared our disaster strategy for AWS. Once you go to AWS, you want a DR for the entire migration too. So we're also planning for those. So the major step that we were doing like in the phase 2 is like these are the things that we were spending a lot of time on. And this took like a lot of energy to coordinate with all the teams working with the entire company to make it happen. Like containerizing application, replicating the data from your existing on data center to a cloud is not an easy task. You have to coordinate, you need to make sure all data is there, and you have to be verifying that and all that. So we took an incremental approach for this. So we went 1 step at a time, and we were able to follow through. And when we get to a stage where we felt like we were able to deliver, then we started negotiating, talking to our AWS partners to see how we can start applying some of this cloud economics teams, like in terms of like doing a EDP and map programs. And then by Q1 of that, we already signed our contract with an AWS. And by May, we were able to completely migrate the entire infrastructure, everything, including all the environments that we are running into AWS. And at the time, we know we have to do more testing when we migrated, but it's not live yet. So we need to do a parallel run, parallel testing and all that. So we did a perf test and regression test, and we ended up like doing building an observability platform from ground up, because when you're deploying new services in AWS, you need an ICE, and it has to be integrated with your existing PagerDuty and all that, so that you know when things go bad, your teams can be alerted or they're on top of it. So we had to make sure that when as we migrate, we have those are in place. And as we are moving along, we want to make sure that the process of deploying and continuous integration deployment and also the change control process are aligned to the company standards. So we didn't make a lot of change, but we started slowly adapting some new standards. We started updating some of those processes. For the same thing for incident management process. By May, we completed just this year, like a couple of months ago, we completed 100% everything running on AWS right now. Now we are focusing on our phase 3, which is our cloud optimization strategy. So basically, we are trying to see, and we are working with AWS to see how we can apply some of the best practices of well architecture framework. We are reviewing entire back to back, and we're looking at migrating all our MongoDB into RDS. And we are also looking at like technical and commercial optimization that I talked about earlier. Like we already signed a saving plan. Now we are looking at like what type of instance optimization that we can do by looking at all the instances that we are running right now. And we have started applying some of those so that we can start saving some of those efficiency that we can start earning that starting next quarter. So our plan for the next year is more focused on how we can be like more run everything in cloud from the database point of view. We want to be completely out of RDBMS, and we want to run a cloud native database. So we are focused on purely on Aurora and our DocumentDB. So that's our major priority for next year, for us to completely move everything into DocumentDB and Aurora. We are also parallelly doing a microservice, and we launched some services this year. So our plan is to accelerate that plan to more towards microservice architecture. So we plan to accelerate that, and we are also thinking to do a serverless architecture, and also looking at like some mesh solutions, so that when we have more microservice architecture coming on board, then you know how to manage and control the traffic and so forth. So if you're thinking like, okay, what can I learn from this, right? This is the learning that we learn during this process. So if you have to be successful, you have to fail fast, learn fast, and improve fast, right? That's the philosophy that we took. And we were not looking for a perfect solution. We were looking at what's our baseline. We documented it, and we went ahead with it, with a plan. And we were able to do that for all this thing that, especially you have to focus on these 9 boxes. Because when you're figuring out your architecture, you'll think like, oh, this architecture may work and this VPC structure may look like, but later you'll figure out like that's not enough for you. You may have to rebuild your VPC multiple times. We did that like a couple of times. So I would say those are all good failures to have, so that you're learning as before you go live. So those will help you to build those muscles, and also help figure out the gaps that you have before you go live. And the same thing with like scoping. When you're starting your initial migration strategy, and you will identify a scope. What is the scope? What are the applications that are going to go as it is? What are the services that are going to go as a container? What are them going to go as a new microservice? So those scope, you'll have to draw a line and say, this is what we're going to do at this point, and then you have to move forward. And later, there are a few cycles that you may end up like picking a few more things. But the overall thing is like, you have to understand like, there is no perfect plan. So you have to start with something and then keep moving. And then when you have an opportunity, come back and revisit this and refresh the plan, so that you'll be able to be ultimately able to deliver the plan that you're looking forward. The one update I would give you, like in the security and compliance, we are in a high security compliance industry and a health insurance, right? So we have to make sure that all the stuff that we are doing are within the compliance, and we can meet our auditor guidelines and external auditor guidelines and all that. So we have to work with our CISO and our security SecOps team to make sure that we are able to do this. So we put together a plan way early, before even we migrated into AWS. We had certain plans. We made an agreement with the team. This is what we're going to do for the migration, and then following what we're going to do. In that way, it will be super easy for us to move forward without we getting blocked into, but that's what we initially thought, but we ended up like going through multiple times. We had to reface it. That's what you will see ultimately. So what I would suggest, like, we don't need to be afraid of like, okay, I put this, but I'm not able to move forward. But overall, you may have to go through this multiple times. The one other example I would say is like the cutover plan that we spent like about like 12 times, like consecutive 12 times. We had to review this with our executive and teams. We had to go refresh this cutover plan multiple times to make sure that this is perfectly working on the day when we are really cutting over. So the lesson we learned from our DR, we had a cutover plan, but the way it ended up, it was not like that good. A lot of pieces were missing. Then we learned our lessons. So we thought like, okay, we have to do a dry run. We need to make sure that every single piece of information is in this cutover plan, so that we don't have to worry about when you're really doing a cutover migration. So obviously you want to have a post-migration plan. You may have some idea, but definitely you'll be surprised after you go live. There are a few things missing, but that's the expectation that you have to set your teams And that way you're not feeling like, oh, you missed out. So you know that you're preparing yourself for success, at the same time setting the right expectations. So the key to success, like if I have to give you some quick tips on like how anybody who are going in this journey in terms of migrating into cloud or migrating their database, right? If your company is working in a multi-region, multi-location, definitely you need to have a multiple TPMs. If you're in a one region, one location, one may be okay. But if you're in a multi-region, I would say probably we had multiple locations. So it was super handy for us, these two TPMs working together, making sure the plans are in place and they are coordinating, and then we were able to go week by week. And we had a daily stand-up meeting, and we also had one executive review meeting every week to make sure that where we are, how are we progressing in this plan and journey. And this really helped us. And over the time, we were able to track, and we had a burn down chart and so forth. Over this 11-month journey, we took like about 1,500 tickets we solved in Jira ticket, and we migrated about 7 environments, and we were able to migrate about 120 applications into AWS. And it's a lot of stuff that you have to use the tools. You have to use the tools, and you have to follow some process. That's the only way you'll know whether you're on the right track or not. The other thing I would say is definitely you may want to start something slow. Even if you have an aggressive plan, you may want to start with some of your lower environment, because when you fail there, it's not going to cost you that much. So it's better to have start with some lower environment and then learn there, and then repeat that process until you go to the prod. So that's exactly what we did. We had 13 environments, so we had to start with our 1, 2, and we repeated that process multiple times until we get to the prod. Another thing is you want to document every single detail, because this is the one step that maybe engineers may hate you for doing it, but definitely this is the one thing that the lessons you will learn is you will have a version control, and you know what you did and what was documented, and you want to make sure that any changes in the architecture, you want to review with your engineering partners or executives to make sure they are aligned. In that way, there is no disconnect. And it happened multiple times. That's over the time we matured, and we were able to adapt to that changes. So that's a key thing I would say for everybody to work to go towards this major goal, right? I also touched this a little bit on my previous slide about the process. When you're going from a data center to cloud, there are a lot of things changing, and especially even in terms of process, in terms of how you're going to keep track and operationally up to date and all that, and incident management process or cap control and all that. You do need a process. You have to change those processes. You don't want to change overnight. You want to gradually go there. So during the process migration, you want to start your process with your lower environment, slowly make this process adapt over time. So, and that's super important, so that when you migrate, then you have something to hang on. And another thing I would say is definitely you want to enable everybody to participate, empower everybody to make changes. That really worked very well for us, because you don't want to be a one team who are doing everything and another team doesn't know what they're supposed to do. So you want to make sure that they're aligned and they know what changes we are making and what they're expected to do. And that way you're very much aligned in terms of technical expectation, and also any issue that comes after, then they will be partnering with you to resolve the problem. And obviously your key stakeholders are pretty critically important. You want to make sure that you're aligned from engineering and from a cost point of view, process change and architecture change, anything you want to connect to your engineering leaders, make sure they are up to date. And we had a weekly meeting, and we keep them posted on our journey. So that really helped us in the entire process, so that we don't have to repeat, and we don't have to have an emergency meeting explaining what's going on, why we are a little delay on our plan and so forth. So this kind of helped us kept every week on a plan. Definitely we were not on target every week. We were many weeks we were behind, but many weeks we were chasing the plans. But this helped us team to be united. Another thing is after you migrate, you may want to go back to your security review and make sure that you're reviewing your security posture, because when you're coming from data center to cloud, everything changes. You may want to make sure from a security standpoint you have right assessment is done, and then right WAF deployment or DDoS protection, whatever we need. We have to be deployed there so that you're completely protected. So you need to make sure that that's done even after you're completely done with your migration. Okay, so with that, any questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I have some questions, if you don't mind.
Of course, yeah.
Of course, if anybody in the audience has some questions, please let us know. One question I had is, you and I have talked a lot about this migration strategy that you had, and before I was promoted to an AWS employee, I was an AWS customer, and we failed at this, right? And the three-phase approach that you did with disaster recovery first, that's the hardest part. How do you identify that first workload to move over? How do you identify that application owner? And this is where we should start.
Yeah, this definitely is not an easy thing. When we are running a data center with a lot of application running, it has a legacy of 20 years. Then I had to go back to each machine, pull all the application that is running, and we had to gather inventory by ourselves. We haven't used any tool. We did not use any tools. We have used the Excel sheet to start with, and then we started mapping owners and what is running and whatever application that is. So it gave us some way to discover with the manual process. Yeah, it's not easy stuff, but it definitely helped us in the long run.
And I think the big thing that you talked about too was the executive sponsorship, because even this morning we were talking about that. How do you get the other teams to buy in, especially if they're so used to doing things status quo? And it's really that executive buy-in in those weekly executive status meetings.
Yeah, that's one of the key learnings that I learned over these years. Definitely this one also here. You want to make sure that your entire engineering and entire executive teams understand what we are doing and how this is going to have a bigger impact on the business. And especially keeping them up to date on every weekly basis is going to really help them to know what's happening and why this is important. And because there are so many other projects happening, and we don't want to be blindsided, so we took the initiative to have a weekly meeting, make sure that every Friday we had a Friday meeting, and we also had a daily stand-up meeting. And this we had in a multi-region, we had one in another region and one in here. So we make sure that we also have an email sent out and all that.
We didn't do that at my other companies. I wish we would have. The other thing that we're talking about is proof of concepts, right? If you can do a POC or proof of concept, the big thing there, the theme that I'm hearing is, fail fast, be quick, and train people, right? So by doing those POCs and proof of concept, you figure out, what am I going to trip on? What's going to work? What's not going to work? But in y'all's case, the three-phase approach kind of helped, because phase one, disaster recovery, you said, we're going to isolate workloads that don't impact the business, that, if something happens, it's not going to take down our core business. So I'm curious, did those POCs, those proof of concepts within that phase one, the DR phase, did that also give your team that knowledge? The other thing that we're hearing here is, train my people. Did doing that phase one approach also give them the confidence to be hands-on with AWS?
Yeah, of course. I think we did a lot of POC. I think there's one stat that I was surprised too. AWS Tam shared with us. We spent about 170 events, and
170 events between May of 2020 and 21. Yeah.
And then out of that, we used Emerson Day. Right, a lot of things happened over this 12-month period. So we were leveraging as much as possible throughout the session, and we had a review meeting, architecture review, Emerson Day, all sort of things. So, and also we did a POC. Every time we do a POC, we look back and see what we can learn. And sometimes some of the services are completely new for us. So we want to make sure that we are going in the right path. So we pull AWS, okay, let's have a Emerson Day. Then we review those, and then we share what we are planning, what type of architecture we are trying to build, and then we double check, and then we take that to implementation.
Always reinventing, always going back, right? And and that's perfect, right? Because we're even getting ready to do, thinking forward to that phase three optimization. I think in a couple of weeks we're going to be doing a well-architected review against a document DB workload, right? It's always going back and making sure that you're always optimizing, always improving. And just kind of to double click on the question about investment, and this is something that we talked about very recently, is how do you make sure that you keep that momentum going? You worked with all these teams, you brought them on board, you had the executive sponsorship, that they're going to buy in, and it's such a challenge to do that. How do you keep that momentum going? How do you keep those teams bought into it and doing these well-architected reviews and innovating?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I think definitely challenging time to time, because they all have their own other initiative, other project they're all working on. So we are inviting everybody to join our AWS training. We are providing budget for them to get trained, and we're also asking them to join some of the training program, and also starting to do some fire drills and game day and all sort of things that we are trying to throw at them, so that they feel more energized to participate and learn how we are operating and where our company is going towards in the next phase of this journey, because we just took our first step. The next step is like more optimization that we have to do. Our goal is to save money, right? Ultimately, we want to reduce our costs. We want to go all the way to like 50% saving. Now we are getting only like 10-15%. So we want to, next few years, our goal is to get all the way to 50% savings.
Well, and I think, and you brought that up in the key points, right, is empowering the team to continue to do what they need to do to innovate, right? And you do that through those training sessions. You do that through giving them that power. So, well, folks, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Sundar, for walking us through this. Like I said, personally, having gone through sessions or migrations that didn't work, it's so awesome hearing about how eHealth made this work, especially in that 11-month time frame.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.